Hello and welcome to a festive edition of the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. I assume this podcast will be going out at some point late in 2023 because what we are talking about today is the top 10 moments of 2023 in Scottish football. And to talk over these, I am joined by my good friend Tony Anderson.
Oh, hello, Craig. How we do? I didn't get the memo about the Christmas jumpers. I feel
No,
terrible.
I had this on anyway. I didn't even, I was like, should I go and put something else on? I'm like, no, this will be fine. But you're looking quite snazzy anyway.
I suppose I know. I was out and about for work. I work for a charity, so it gets really, really busy, as you can imagine at this time of year, just doing completely random things and running about getting people stuff, which is nothing really to do with your job, but you just do it anyway. But so I was just running about, but I never thought maybe a nice Christmas jumper would have been nice. I never really do the whole Christmas jumper thing. I think maybe it's dying out because people don't work in offices quite as much as they used to.
Yeah, well, I've got three jumpers that are like somewhat Christmassy or festive, and I just have to rotate them through December because it's like it's only a month a year you can wear them.
Yeah.
Like this one, I've tried to argue could be like, sorry, I'm assuming people can now watch our content on YouTube.com. Mine has some reindeer on it. Now, reindeer are not just for Christmas; they are a all year, not an all year round animal. But they're a winter animal. So like you'll see reindeer in February, but I don't think I could wear my reindeer jumper in February. But nonetheless, we are not here to talk about migratory patterns of North Pole animals. We could do, but we're not. We're here to run through our top 10 moments of the year in Scottish football. And I found this a bit tricky for a number of reasons. Like I'll talk through my process. You can talk through yours as well. But first of all, you remember stuff at the time, and then the top 3, 4, 5, 6, they immediately come to mind. And there were six things that I put down on this list. Slap bang, like I remember them that happened. And then you're trying to be like, okay, what else is interesting that happened? And I think my reading of our brief today was that it was to be like serious, not like, I don't mean like, it's not like you're saying, oh, haha, this funny thing happened. It's like, what are the 10 best things that happened in Scottish football this year? So no doubt there will be things that we've forgotten. And as you say, you try to get the balance of the top flight stuff, international stuff, lower league stuff, etc. And in amongst all that, you're trying to get that balance, but you're also trying to keep it amusing. I think you're still trying to have, we don't want to, be boring. It doesn't want to be like a BBC article. So it's trying to get how do you fit all these things together? And sometimes you have to stretch the definition of moment a little bit. There's certainly at least one or two of mine that would apply to. Probably my bottom, two near the bottom for me anyway. Because I've tried to put dates on them, and the other thing that occurred to me is, unsurprisingly, a massive chunk of these happen in May and June because that's when it happens. That's when all the big moments are in Scottish football. All the leagues get decided, all the big games and stuff. So you're then sitting in December trying to remember what was the best things about things that happened in the summer. But nonetheless, I think I'm quite happy with my list, even if there are things I've forgotten. I'm happy that all 10 of the things I've got are 10 pretty memorable things. I don't know, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it was the same. It was also, I think everything you're saying is you're right. It's everything from sort of May onwards, right? And then the other part of the year is totally forgotten. I bet there's some good ones. I've got, I think a lot of them are quite easy. You got your people know that playoffs, cup shocks, brilliant Scotland teams, and then me try to squeeze in something for Hibs, even though it wasn't that good, just because I wanted to. And it's my podcast, so I can do what I want. and try to make sure nothing from Hearts made it in. So you'll see what I managed to put in instead of Hearts winning at Celtic Park last week, while still using Celtic Park for that day.
Perfect. Well, yeah, that's great. So I think we'll just crack on, and I think what we're just going to do is in classic disorganised terrace podcast form, we'll give our number 10 each. Neither of us know what each other's got, which I think is actually integral to the discussion. Can you react with surprise to each other? But what have you got at number 10 at the bottom, Tony?
Right. I'm going to go for, as I said, I didn't actually number these. I just came with 10 things. I'm just going to do this on the fly. But I'm going to go with what I think was the best. Last minute winners are the best thing in football, most likely the most enjoyable part of it. So I'm going to go for Callum Morrison's long range banger on the 30th of September, I think it was, against Montrose to win 3-2. He's got absolutely no right to shoot there. I don't really know how it's actually managed to get in, but it has, and it has to go down as one of the best goals scored in the country this season.
Yeah, I think it's been a bit of a year of like, it feels like there's been quite a lot of like big last minute goals like over the year, and there's certainly a very late goal or two very late goals that feature very highly in my chart later on. But the Morrison one's one of many that I think could have been picked in that category. I've got another one actually that's a crucial one that could make a big difference in Falkirk's title race. You know, it's September, but they're starting to edge ahead of Hamilton Accies in the league, and it's picking up those points when you've not played that well, I think. But when you I think they felt they deserved to win that game, but they maybe looked like they weren't going to. And then it's those moments that you remember when you win a title.
And he scored a double just this week, didn't he? Like against Accies there. So he's really come on, and stuff like that happens where you think, well, Falkirk, it's all going to end now. The fun's over. People are starting to score on the turn without looking in the top corner in the last minute for 30 yards. Because that was a game they actually dominated a lot, and Montrose sort of just snuck up the park a few times and pinned them back. So it's normally the type of game where people must be going, this is surely our moment. Falkirk go back to where they probably belong, which is sort of the middle of the championship.
Because I consider, I tried to put the positive spin on all of these, so I did consider Falkirk getting absolutely scudded by Airdrie in the playoff semi-final as one of
that
my
might
moments.
be higher on mine.
Okay, I did think about it, and then I was like, no, I will stick to the positives. But
that's positive if you're an Airdrie fan.
Positive for Airdrie. But yeah, so I've stuck to the ones I think mostly that you could see as well. But number 10 for me is probably the biggest stretch of a moment. But you could pick one of them as a moment, I suppose the last one. But Kevin Van Veen's 11 goal scoring streak, 11 games in a row he scored for Motherwell, which is not a record of any sort. I think maybe a Motherwell club record, but people kept claiming it was a record of like all time. It's not, but it's certainly in the kind of modern era of Scottish football, certainly I think since the 90s and probably further beyond, the most consecutive top flight games someone scored in. Obviously, it kind of finished like as an ongoing streak because he left. I don't know whether that will count if he ever comes back. Will he be able to get 12?
Sounds like he will come back, So
I don't think that counts, but nonetheless, to be Motherwell were in an absolute mess at the start of the year. Like they lost to Raith Rovers in the cup, and that was kind of the end of Stevie Hamill, and they looked in a lot of bother at the bottom of the league, and then Van Veen basically just, and he spent a bit of time at that point being playing out wide and stuff. And he played through the middle for Motherwell before, and he'd done well. And I think we generally thought he's quite a good player, but he scored 14 goals in 11 games is quite impressive, and he ended up dragging them to just a boring sort of mid-table finish at the end of it. And yeah, there was like one of them was like a 98th minute penalty to make sure he still ticked along, and there was stuff like that just seemed to kind of keep happening for him. And yeah, I think it's one of those things that when you look back on the year, you'll be like, geez, well, that was like, it came out of nowhere as well, because I think I was looking at his goal scoring stats before that in the season, and he'd been scoring all right, obviously, but it just suddenly, yeah, he'd scored like a wee streak at the start of the season. Then he had a gap of what must be about 15, 16, 17 games, so he only scored in 3 of them. Then he had 3 in a row, a couple off, and then, yeah, bang, and finished the season with 29 goals for Motherwell is quite
astounding.
A lot.
It's astounding. Again, like you're saying, because it's not even like it's a season where they finished third. And you thought, as you said, they were god awful. And maybe something that he's never experienced. I suppose he has played for rubbish teams in the past, but
lots of them.
Yeah, it's like maybe learning like being a talismanic figure and learning to be and like sort of being the main man might suit you more than what you maybe have understood. But you learn this sort of later on in your career that's maybe what suits you, and everything has to be funneled through you, and you actually enjoy the responsibility. I don't know, because he's got that. He seems to have that attitude. It always came off. He was relatively eccentric, and it doesn't seem to have worked out terribly well at Groningen. And not I don't mean in like on the park sense, because he scored goals, even though he did get in a fight with a fan, I think. But it seems like he's fallen out with the manager, and his family are still here. Is that right? In the UK, and she's given birth to his child. So he's done the come and get me plea.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed, get him back over. He'll be because it's good. It'll either be he absolutely tears it up for someone, or he's shit, and either
That
both of
will
those are
more likely. Like it's how it normally happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what have you got next then, Tony?
Right, I'm going to go for because it's mid-season and it just happened recently. But I'm just going to go for Wraith Rovers beating Dundee United at Tannadice there. I think it's like seems like a seismic moment in it, and sort of goes against everything that everyone thought was going to happen with Wraith Rovers because the narrative's been they can't keep doing it. And I get it, totally fair when you look at the games, the styles of the wins that they're getting. That has to come to an end at some point. They're just too close to the bone all the time, and they've got a small squad. But for them to go to Dundee United to a full house, and it was, I don't want to get into TV nonsense because that's some of the boring sort of chat that you can get in Scottish football, but it's sad that it wasn't on and all eyes were on it, like on a Friday night or something. But I think that benefited the crowd. It benefited them. It have the biggest, what looks like will be one of the biggest games this season in 10,000. But I think everyone thought that this is it. Then Dundee United will sort of flex their muscles a bit. And for Dundee United to go there, I mean, for Wraith Rovers to go there and get a clean sheet, and for Dylan Easton to score again,
incredible goal as well.
Yeah,
like for it's like I think you can judge like a good goal, but a good goal in that type of circumstance becomes better just by the meaning of the goal.
Yeah, and how much responsibility it is, and what the scenario is, and like you're saying there, and Easton's sort of like kind of similar. He sort of embodied everything that Wraith are doing here. It's like that you don't quite believe it, and Easton's sort of someone that looks like I don't know enough about Easton to talk about. He's always seems to have played lower level, and there's always been murmurs maybe about attitude and stuff like that. And it's like he's got the bit between his teeth now and believing he's like driving this. And you're sitting watching now. I watch Wraith Rovers because obviously they've captured the imagination a bit. So you try and watch their games, and you're thinking, Christ, half that Scottish Premiership could do with a player like that who could play a bit off the cuff, take a bit of responsibility, create a goal out of nothing, score a goal out of nothing, and you're like, it just seems like, why is this the highest he's ever even played? Like Wraith Rovers are like one of the bigger clubs that he's actually played for, and now you're just like, I mean, the belief that's going to surge through them to go to the not just their title rivals, but again, like we're talking like the 6th biggest club in the country, to just turn up there and to do that and shock everyone and all this lucky stuff about them, and they seem to be quite enjoying going by their social media. They're enjoying all the sort of questionable things, and Dundee United didn't take it very well. And it would just be, it'd be one of the, I think it would be one of the biggest shocks in Scottish football history if Wraith Rovers were to take on Dundee United over a whole league season and actually pick them to a title. And this could be the big moment where that's possible and it becomes a reality.
Yeah, and I had it down as like all those turnarounds that I'd had it down on my longer list and then put it on, but just to in consecutive games to be like coming from behind to win and like stoppage time basically, like to do it in a couple of games, and then even they started the season, they were 2-0 down at Firhill and got a draw out of nowhere. Like they just seem to keep doing it. They had a midweek winner at Arbroath just before they took on United. Of course, we're recording this. I think they play tonight.
United
in the Championship, so they're probably we'll probably by the time this goes out they'll have fucked it, but you never know. But a good choice, I think. For number 9, this is the first of my 3 ventures into the Scotland national team. I could have had many more. I limited myself to 3. I've decided to leave out, you might have it, Scott McTominay's goal in Spain, which I thought was like a goal but not goal in Spain, which I thought is like, that will be remembered for a long time. It won't be remembered as much because, as we'll talk about, like we made it anyway. But that felt like a massive moment at the time, and it was like that could have been one of the most iconic goals, you know, and all the carry on around
as well. To do again, like you were talking about with Dylan Easton, it's to do something spectacular that you don't notice in that type of game, to which would have been to qualify and top the group. It would have been fucking mental. It would have been crazy.
we got there anyway, and so that's not a big deal. But what I'm going to go for is the least, like, the results, not the important part here, but just it'll be something that anyone who's in Hampden that night will never forget, which is the Georgia game.
Mm-hmm.
So just the 20th of June, very far into the season, like for football still to be happening. But also the 20th of June, we should not be getting a monsoon like that. Our weather's shit, but it's usually all right in the summer. And I just remember I was walking, generally walk out to Hampden rather than try to bother with the train from the city centre. There was a wee spit of rain coming on, but it wasn't that bad. And then I got in, I was in a wee bit early that night, I think. And then it was once I was inside, it started pissing down. And you're like, oh, there's quite a lot of rain. And then all of a sudden you're like looking at the players warming up and you're seeing the pitch and you're like, oh, fuck, this is like soaking. This is like puddles. And then you start thinking like, oh, is this game going to happen? And I think what we were probably lucky with was that the worst of the rain happened after the referee had gone back inside. So he's out. It's obviously raining a bit. He goes inside, and then they come out to start the game, and it's all of a sudden like I think they said it was like a month's worth of rain and falling, like very much localised on Mount Florida. Yeah, and it was like. And then obviously all the fact we kicked off, managed to score, and then as soon as we scored, it was like, oh fuck, this shouldn't be happening, and they hauled everybody off, and then that massive weight, but the effort to obviously clear the pitch, and it was a very special night atmosphere wise, and then topped off by a really fantastic goal by McTominay to seal the win, and the missed penalty at the end.
It was you look at it, it was quite an affirming sort of magical moment in terms of everyone. Not even people watching at home and in the stadium, it's like everyone coming together because there's a belief that we need to get this on. We could tell they didn't really fancy it, especially after we went 1-0 up. It was desperation to get that game to go ahead. You've got all the fans singing, no one leaving as well. I mean, these things matter. I mean, everyone. It was during the week. I'm imagining people missed transport home. I imagine it became a nightmare for a lot of people to get home for Hampden. So everyone's sticking with it, singing, pressurising the ref. Let's be honest. Everyone's staying like that, puts pressure on them. And then, like you said, you've got all the ball boys sweeping it up. You've got the staff putting it off. And then you've got
Liam Kelly trying to kick water off the pitch.
Yeah, they end up kicking it back on. Liam, stay off the pitch. You shouldn't be here. And but the players doing it and having to get stopped, because obviously they need to preserve their energy. People picking up things that aren't anything to do with being a groundsman and just grabbing any tool to pull it off. And then obviously the players producing a performance as well after it. And obviously the Georgian players quite rightly pissed off as well. It was a bonkers day, and it's one in the long line of these qualifiers where you think it just shows that there's years and years and years of no luck, and it seems that you get it all in sort of like in one sort of period in a group, with thinking like Oslo and this going ahead, and the rumours about going to Paisley the next day and all that. It was quite a couple of hours.
Exactly, and obviously the fact it does contribute to a massive a qualification. It's kind of you get these brilliant moments and then they count for nothing, but that's like. It did actually lead you somewhere as well, because that was win 4 out of 4 and took us a massive step towards qualifying. What about number 8 then, Tony?
I'll go for Airdrie pumping Falkirk in the playoffs, because obviously
the manner of it,
and the fact that they went on and done it, and obviously Reece McCabe scoring in these games and going forward, and they do it, and it's just like must have been I use the Cal Morrison one as when they realise that this is probably going to be their year. When this happened, when you're getting beat 6-2 off Airdrie in a playoff opening, the first leg as well. It's a first leg when there's still so much football to be played, and it's already been stuffed down and it's gone.
You're 5-0 down at half time. That's not ideal.
Yes, it's over. And then the idea must be looking round at that point, and obviously loads of people would have travelled because it's a huge game. And this is the polar opposite of the Callum Morrison one, when people are thinking we might never get out of this league. Like this is like we're talking. That's up there as one of the worst results in Falkirk's history, really, when you put it on the context and stuff. And they managed to do that, and it's like that's why to get the whole Falkirk scenario, like the story of them being in League One, will be remembered for years and years, because it just, a lot of it doesn't really make sense, and you always expect that it's like a team, like it would be like if Rangers went down to when they went to the Championship and it took them like 5 years to get out. It doesn't really make any real sense, because Falkirk are by far the biggest club in that environment. And for them, 5-0 down at half time, it was just, when it was coming through, I'm no expert on the lower leagues, but I knew that was weird.
and it was, yeah, and it was something I thought about putting in, because I watched the game, but see, the games that are on BBC Alba, I always feel like they got a wee bit less, less folk interested in them. But Airdrie, the playoff final was a massive one as well for them in terms of the promotion, because it came so close. The previous season, they should have probably beaten Queen's Park and didn't. Got beaten in extra time, and then this time around they obviously easily swept aside Falkirk, and it looked like they would beat Accies, but then Accies suddenly turned out a performance out of nowhere, and actually it was a last minute kind of equaliser in the away game that took Airdrie, that took the game to penalties ultimately, and then they held their nerve there, and it felt like the culmination of like a couple of really big years for Airdrie, like under Murray first and then McCabe, and like they were building something, a lot of young players and all that, and it felt like they very much something they deserved last season. But yeah,
and now Rhys McCabe's lost the run of himself, and he thinks they're going to win the league, and he sees no reason why not.
barely won a game since he said it, I think.
Yeah.
It's like, Rhys, you don't need to try and win the league. Like, staying up would be fine. Like,
I don't even know why. I don't know why. Again, it is losing the run of yourself a little bit. I don't mean in a bad way. I'm not against it. I think he's done a good job and all that. But it's just funny. It's because so much good's happened all in such a short space of time, and you've done things like what we're talking about, humping Falkirk 6-2. You would start, and then I think they played well against Dundee United or something, and they were really competitive in every game. So he probably does just start to think, why the hell not? But you're still Airdrie. It's still the Championship.
We've seen why.
Yeah.
So my number 8, I've gone for. This is the last one that this applies to. I think, yeah, that's true. This is the last one this applies to. Not just one game, but a night of football. It's the 17th of August, 2023, and Luzerne 2, Hibs 2, and Hearts 3, Rosenborg 1. Kind of on the same evening of football. Two pretty big results for Scottish clubs in Europe. Two that kind of came not out of the blue, but neither team certainly went into them with a great deal of confidence. I would say those ties, and Hibs eventually were very good in the first leg and got that 3-1 win, which was quite crucial. Hearts got absolutely pummeled in the first half out in Norway, but managed to keep themselves in the game and pull themselves back into it. I think the Hibs one was on like an hour earlier. You were obviously over there, Tony, and Hibs obviously, I wouldn't say comfortable wouldn't be the right word, but they kind of got the job done.
Was it comfortable for long periods? I can tell you.
No, but
I remember hearing you guys talk about this after, and you saying that there were just loads of balls going in the box, but Hibs were dealing with all right. But when you're sitting there and the ball's never going in your box constantly, it's absolute torture. But I'm sure if I watched the game back, it probably was a lot more comfortable than what I thought it was.
And that was like, and so that was kind of the first one that finished, I think, unless I'm getting my timeline wrong, but I don't think I am. And then
I think so.
And then Hearts, obviously against Rosenborg, the fact they were 2-1 down from the first leg and then concede like early on, and you think, fuck, like this is gone for them. But then they managed to score. It was Shanklin scored quite quickly after they'd conceded. Kind of got them back into the game, and they were very good in this game. And they kept going, and Cammy Devlin scored just after half time, a rare goal for him. And then, they're throwing everything at this game, but it's looking like it's probably going to extra time. And then Devlin pops up again right in the last minute, and I think it was a deflected effort from kind of outside the box, and it goes in, and it was absolute bedlam in Tynecastle that night. And Hearts, I think, generally don't do very well in Europe. I rarely remember them. There's been an odd exception, Braga being an exception. They won away in
Bordeaux years back, and
but
Bal.
then still got knocked out.
Yeah,
in that
Basel was
tie.
one. Robbie Nielsen.
Yeah, so they've had the odd result, but Tynecastle is not necessarily a stadium I associate with like big European matches. And yet that was like one of those nights where like, this should be like this much more often. And yet it felt like both clubs were building something there. Now, obviously, they both ended up getting scudded in the next round. I'm not really sure that's a black mark on either of the names. I think Pauk were
ours was against Aston Villa, who looked like they could possibly win
the Premier League and the Conference League. But Hearts, they'll be a wee bit annoyed in the sense that I think Pauk were therefore taken at Tynecastle, and then they fell apart. Because I mean, Aberdeen should have probably beat them at Pittodrie and drew with them away, even though Pauk won that group in the Conference League. But I felt that was a big night, and it was I was sitting out here when I record because I used to work late on a Thursday night, and it was one of those nights that you kind of like get sucked into it all. And
even though you're not a fan of it, just because it's big.
Yeah.
Because I've got Martin Boyle's goal in Switzerland in mind. That was my indulgent one, so I'll do it. But then I'll just do that one next as well, and I'll just collect it in with what
Number
you're saying
7.
Yeah, so I'll just collect it in with what you're saying there. And I think there's a like wider thing is like you're saying with Pauk and Aberdeen's performances in Europe and the Hibs and the Hearts. It's like there's a lot more results and a lot more performances nowadays where you think it's no a kick in the arse off a Scottish team getting through getting to the knockouts outside the Old Firm. You could see it if it's all done correctly and they maybe invest the money that they're all spending now slightly better. that it's definitely more than possible because they're all getting individual results and Hibs and the Hearts case are actually winning ties that are either that are winnable, even though you would probably still say they're slightly not. Certainly Hibs case.
They're like 40-60 against you. Maybe.
Yeah. And we always lose them. Like that's the historic. You'd never ever get those sorts of results. It was always disappointing. Because like with the Hibs one, I mean, I watched the home leg in Italy. I was on my honeymoon, and I was outside a pub. They didn't have it, so I had my laptop with me that I took on my honeymoon with me for this reason specifically. And I was hotspotting my phone, watching the game because it was on BBC. And me and Mandy went to dinner outside this pub, and I had it. And then obviously the Italian guys like their football, so people started coming round the around our like bench sitting outside. And obviously people are sitting in, they can't see that I've got a laptop. So I'm celebrating quite wildly at one point. And people are just looking for outside the pub, but they can't see the laptop. And I'm just going everywhere. And then Mandy was kind enough to allow me to go to Switzerland and go our separate ways in Naples airport at the end of the honeymoon. And it was brilliant. First time I'd ever actually got away to see Hibs abroad. I missed it after the cup final when we were Bromby, and obviously when we won that tie against the Greek team, Artis, around then. So I was absolutely loving it, and it was just such a brilliant experience. And while at the time I was disappointed with when Hearts came through that they'd also managed to turn it around. It's right. It was absolutely brilliant. And from Hibs' point of view, it was just cool that big result, big win. And it was Martin Boyle who's the one who actually gets the go, and he's just had his 300th appearance. And he is, I think it is, it gets chucked around a lot, but I think Martin Boyle can go around as a bit of a modern day Hibs legend due to where he's come from, how it's worked out. Big goals in derbies, hat-tricks at Hampden against Rangers, and obviously big goal away in a European tie. But to get through, but it was that away end for that, it was stone steps at the bottom, so it's dodgy, really. And then they've got the big sort of plastic bit round you, so you're caged in. So that was all absolutely brilliant. And we just went 2-1 down, and obviously we went 1-0 up, so we were 2-1 down, so it went to basically 4-3, and there was still 20 minutes to go, and you're like, and it was like a shocker of a goal conceded from a corner. Nobody's marking on, like, right, this is it. That's the game up here. We went 4-1 up in the tie. We're going to chuck it away. Classic. The most classic thing that's ever happened. And then just go out apart. The guy's sleeping. So Yuan just boosts past him, cuts it back, and Boyle scores, and he was straight over to the away end. And it was a brilliant night for Hibs. And like you're saying, just it's been some decent nights for Scottish teams in Europe recently off the back of some of but still some of the most embarrassing dropped in there because Hibs even got beaten Andorra just this season as well.
Well, because you even say that, I didn't include it. But obviously, Rangers won their group, and winning away to Betis is a pretty big result. And obviously, when they
Aberdeen
needed
beating
to do it,
Frankfurt, even though it was over, it's still a huge result. Huge.
But as you say, like Rangers won that group, and if anything, like they even though they dropped points against, like they got 1 point out of 6 against the shit team from Cyprus. And then Aberdeen, on a different day, they definitely didn't embarrass themselves in that group at all when people were maybe fearing for them when it was drawn. Even Celtic, I would say, in their Champions League group, they obviously beat Feyenoord at the end. Like the 3 games at Celtic Park, they were well in them all. They probably, or they could easily have come away with 3 home wins, and maybe they'd have got through. So like, and so I think there is a sense, like, if it wasn't for the fact Celtic do that in every single campaign, you'd be like, oh, maybe they're building something. But it is very much on this kind of knife edge of like, maybe one of these times they will just all start coming off, or maybe we'll just get further away.
Maybe get a couple of good years when it just goes for everyone, and then like you've got teams getting to the everyone's at the knockouts. Rangers, Celtic maybe get to latter stages of the Europa League together, or even one of them getting to like latter stages of the conference, one in the Europa, like one of the other teams actually getting to the knockouts. Maybe 2 of the weaker, like the outside over, but actually getting to groups at the same, like both getting into the groups, and then there's like 4 clubs playing in Europe till Christmas at least. I mean, I'd like to think it is coming. I'd like to think it is.
We'll wait and see. My number 7 on my list was one of the 2 playoff games that I featured in the list, and it was Spartans winning promotion to the SPFL.
Brilliant, yeah.
Not a big lover necessarily of Spartans. I find them a bit of a kind of Tory institution, but they nonetheless, there's just everything about them from their name down. But nonetheless, they have been one of the teams that I think have been knocking at the door of the SPFL for a long time. They'd obviously got beaten in the playoffs once before in the kind of Highland Lowland version of it by Cove, I think it was. And then this time around, they beat Brechin, obviously, in penalties to get to the final. And then obviously they pick up the big result against Albion Rovers, which I think people are a wee bit conflicted on, in the sense that I think Albion Rovers were quite a popular lower league club. But nonetheless, I think for a club like Spartans, they are a big community hub, and they do have a lot of things going for them in that respect, and they have proved themselves, I think, since they came up. They're very much like they will probably finish 4th in League 2. They'll probably have a wee shot at the playoffs. They're probably not Edinburgh. Well, definitely not Edinburgh. Like, they literally could have been Edinburgh City, as it turns out. But they're not in the same. They're not in the same boat, in the sense that there's like a much more sustainable background to what's going on at Spartans. Are they spending more money than I think like they bring in through their football operations? Probably, but it feels like they're not. It's not pie in the sky. They do actually have people going to watch them. They do actually have like roots in the local community in a way that Edinburgh City never have. They're a bit itinerant. Like Spartans have been the team of like North Edinburgh for a very long time, and I think it was a big moment for them in the way that they did it and everything.
Absolutely, and it's the morph from being just a vehicle in the community for good, which is a very positive thing, but to becoming actually a football club as well. I feel like that's actually changed in this season, and like you're saying, the like I loved watching the video of the Spartans on A View for the Terrace with the young team and the work that they're doing there, because that's where I grew up in Pilton, and it was just nice to see young people in that area being represented in a positive light, which is quite literally never happened in my entire life. How that's viewed. I've got Spartans on here, so like for my 6, it was them beating Dundee United. Still and it's just like it also shows the problem of like the groups can be a good laugh at the start, but if you still had teams having to come in and just play knockout early, why not just do that? You could still make it the way it is, but you could have the knockout system happening right at the start of the season as well, and you could get things like that where it actually causes real bother. Like if Dundee United were to get knocked out there, it would be great, but for Spartans to get a result like that, like you say, they just get promoted and then they follow that up right away by beating, again, one of the biggest clubs in the entire country, a team that's played in the semi-finals of European competition, and in the 80s is one of the most successful Scottish
They
teams.
got to the final. They got to the final.
Final, yes, sorry, got the final. Aye. So for Spartans to straight away do that, the second they get an opportunity ever to do that, they do it right away. And obviously the Dundee United players coming off, nearly fighting with the fans as they're walking off. It's just so the early part of the season. As I said, I still think it can be done better. I don't love the groups, but just where, like, for example, Hibs getting beaten, Andorra and Dundee United there. We barely had a breath. The Kings basic, and people are getting screamed at the side, really, and there's full-blown meltdowns right away. It's just it's the people say the season started so early is crap that we have to do all these qualifying things, but sometimes it brings real hilarity. But for like to carry on your Spartans point, yeah, it's so quickly they've come to terms with it is quite scary. And like you're saying, the morph of the club, which is not just a vehicle for good in Pilton, but actually becoming a football team where I think we're getting these kids now when they might not just be Spartans fans, but they say that and then they also go along to see Hibs and Hearts. I think you're seeing a group of people becoming just Spartans football fans, and that's really what you read, and it's pretty much what Edinburgh City were never able to really do.
It's something that becomes much easier when you're an SPFL club and your team, your name appears on the BBC. It's not just like, you were going to watch us play, in the regional, the Lowland League of East of Scotland before that, and they're playing, local teams and stuff. And all of a sudden it's like, all right, well, Spartans now, because then it's like, oh, we've got Forfar away. And you're like, well, oh, let's go to Forfar. And then before you know it, that's you sucked in. Do you know what I mean? And I think they're a club who probably Edinburgh struggles to support a third team. That's kind of historically always been the case.
But they've probably got the best.
Yeah, it's a bit. Yeah, exactly. And the two clubs have a bit of a stranglehold anyway. But they've probably got the best chance of any club, and they'll definitely be switching places with Edinburgh City before we know it. For my number 6, I have gone one of the most chaotic title deciders I have seen in a very long time, which was the final day of the championship season. Now, the final day of the championship in itself was nuts because 9 out of the 10 teams still had something to play for. So you had Queen's Park and Dundee going for the title, which is the game that was on the telly, which is the game that I'll ultimately talk about. You had 4 teams trying to fit into the remaining playoff spots. So you had Partick Thistle. It would have taken a disaster for them not to make it, and there nearly was a disaster for them. It was Inverness were still there, Morton were still there, and Ayr United were all looking to seal place in that top 4. Ayr United ultimately scored a late goal up in Inverness, which took them from finishing outside the playoff places to finishing second. So that was mad in itself. Wraith Rovers were just sitting doing nothing, and then at the bottom, everyone else was trying to fight relegation, and ultimately Cove went down, and Hamilton Accies ended up in the playoffs, and we already talked about what happened to them. But the title decider itself, Queen's Park went into the game a couple of points behind Dundee, I think. So Dundee just needed to go there and draw. And it was obviously slightly reminiscent of the previous season when, because you had the ups with Kelly via Broth, where you had the upstarts, against the bigger club.
Yeah.
And it's kind of they're facing off at the very, very late part of the season. The Kelly Arbroath game was entertaining. I enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed the end of it, but it wasn't as kind of ludicrous as this one.
Yeah.
Because so Queen's Park need to win, and Dundee immediately take the lead within 4 minutes, and you're like, right, okay, well, we see where this is going. And then by the 12th minute, Queen's Park are winning. Charlie Fox scored one of the most ridiculous goals you will ever see to equalise, and then Connor Shields made it 2-1, and you're like, all right. But then Dundee equalised themselves, and it's 2 each within basically 15 minutes, and then it's 3-3 at half time, and eventually Dundee kind of deservedly, because they were the better team throughout the game, I would say, but kind of end up taking the game away and winning 5-3 at the end. But for so many games, when they're billed as title deciders, when they're billed as these big matches, it doesn't materialise, and it ends up being it doesn't mean there's still drama, there's still tension, there's not necessarily excitement. But with this one, it was just like, what on earth is going on here? And as a Dundee fan, like, that's one that you'll remember for a very long time, to win the league in that fashion. And especially with it being at Ochil View, and the fact that like the number of tickets were so restricted and all of the carry on around that, it's just like every aspect of it is just like what a ludicrous second tier we've got.
Yeah, and what we just saw recently with Wraith Rovers, like victory last week in the 4-3, it's such a more exciting league than the top flight. The way that the teams play, the way the teams express it. I know me and Fowler done a whole thing on YouTube about it, so I don't just want to regurgitate all that after Derek Adams' discussions. And again, it's not, and I think the championship proves that what I was trying to say in that isn't always just about standard. It's about how teams are style and how they're putting across and the types of players that they're using in certain positions. And the championship always has slobber knockers. Like the Friday night games are quite often really, really exciting and fun. So just that it just epitomizes it right away, that even till then you get these ridiculously high scoring games. And you were talking about Thistle nearly fucking it up for the playoffs, but I might mention them when they did eventually fuck it up.
I've got that as well. That's coming up. So that brings us into our top half. Only 41 minutes, and we've got 5 more to do. We did expect this, and we'll go on to your number 5, Tony. What have you got?
Well, I've got. I probably would have had this lower, but it was just the other ones were working quite nicely into what you were talking about. I'll go for Santa getting booed at Celtic last week, as Celtic lost their first game at Celtic Park. And what was it, 54, 53 matches? It's just, as I said, I know that there's that it isn't as simple as that, and they're not being overly petulant. I know they've got issues with their board, and I agree with some of them for Celtic fans, but still, just when you just look at the facts of the situation, could you losing at halftime one fucking time, and an old man comes on trying to Santa, and he takes the brunt.
See, to be fair, do you not think that Santa would get booed at halftime at most grounds across the country, no matter what the score is? Because I do.
That's an interesting.
I think if I'm going to Rugby Park tomorrow, if Kelly were 2-0 up against St Johnstone at halftime and they brought Santa out, I reckon there would be some light-hearted at least booing. Like,
yeah. I think these were serious boos.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Because I don't know if it's the idea of like the Celtic, because they don't concentrate on the football side enough. But it's just funny seeing this old man getting he looks so sad in the picture. Like he's probably a huge Celtic fan. The guy who's doing it would be my guess. I doubt he's just plucked at random, and he takes all the heat for it. Celtic finally getting defeated at Parkhead. You'd think I would put the team that actually beat Celtic at Parkhead as one of the moments, but no, I think the real moment at Parkhead last week was Santa being booed at halftime.
Well, I thought about putting one of Kelly's wins over the Old Firm, but it was too many. I didn't want to clog up the list, you know.
Yeah.
So,
well, I was thinking that the Celtic ones, it probably would have been, if there'd only been one this season, that might have made it. But it seems like we're at a stage where, I mean, 3 teams have drew with them, and then Hughes have beat them, Celtic twice, Hearts have beat them. So really, and by the time you're getting to December, they've had quite a lot of bad results, which stops the moments seem much more seismic at the time, but then when you get through it, like you said, they're getting pumped at Rugby Park every time they go. So
it's also classic Scott, for the kind of leans into what you're talking about, that there have been 4 major trophies settled in 2023, 2 League Cups, because we had the February final and we had the one the other week. We've got a Scottish Cup and we've got a league title, and I suspect none of the 4 of them have made your list or mine, because it's just like, yes, okay, and there was nothing thrilling about any of them. Like,
no,
I couldn't even remember that. I know Celtic beat Rangers in that League Cup final in February. Couldn't tell you a thing about it or what happened. I think Kyogo maybe scored, but I might be making that up. Like, I watched the game. I'm sure it was entertaining enough for the afternoon. And then, yeah, it's like, okay, well, yes. Otherwise, yeah, you expect these things to happen. So it is a bit
Morelos scored, didn't he?
Did he?
It deflected in, and he was rubbish in the game. That's it. And Kyogo scored the winner. That was it. Yeah.
There you go. You remember more than me.
I would have never got that until you told me the Kyogo, and it was February. I just remembered it because I was in the pub and I won a bet builder because Alistair Johnson got booked in the last minute for back chat.
Excellent. Well, my number 5 is the second appearance of the Scotland national team. And I think it would be quite obvious, given the context of the year, that the men's national team are featuring 3 times. The women's national team are nowhere fucking near this because they have had a stinking year. But it's the best performance of the year from the Scotland men's national team, without a doubt. It's Scotland 2, Spain 0.
Mhm.
March. Absolutely incredible. Can't remember if you were at that one, Tony, or watching.
Yeah, I managed. I got.
Was that the one you were at with Ewan? Yeah.
I went with Ewan, and I don't really go to Scotland games, and I got to go to one of the greatest of an entire history.
I mean, the noise inside Hampden again.
wow.
Hampden gets stick for the atmosphere, and sometimes that's true, but when like Scotland are playing like that, and it's a big game like that, it's noisy, it's raucous, and Spain really didn't seem like they coped with it at all. We didn't cope with the atmosphere, and they didn't cope with our style of play, and we just battered them into submission all night long. 2 goals like coming from that left back position, but it's our 2 different left backs that we managed to play in the same team that set them up, because Robertson capitalised on an advantage to set McTominay up for the first, and then Kieran Tierney with like a moment that will, I mean, hopefully something even better happens, but it feels like the moment that will epitomise his Scotland career, when he just takes Carvajal to the absolute cleaners down that side. It's the fact Carvajal comes to basically try and body check him, and he just shimmies out his way. And then it's a bad cross, but it deflects back to McTominay. And certainly the making of Scott McTominay as a Scotland player as well. I mean, he's had moments. He obviously scored the winner against Israel that was huge. He's played well up till then. He'd come off the bench to score twice against Cyprus the previous game. But this was where he kind of was unleashed, I think, as a Scotland player. Ended up finishing as one of the top scorers in the entire qualifying campaign.
Aye.
And now you're like, okay, this guy is very, very good. But it was just a brilliant all-round performance, and one that will be remembered for a long time, I think.
Yeah, I've got this on my list, obviously. And yeah, the Tierney one, it was like just that Carvajal's won like 4 European Cups. And it wasn't just that moment. Tierney, that was the one that led to the goal. And it was funny because he'd done so much good work, and it was actually a really shit cross. And it ends up in the finish is unreal for Scott McTominay. That's such a difficult skill, how he does that. He makes it look very, very easy when it's really, really difficult. But Tierney was doing this to Carvajal all night. And that whole night as well, it all like goes into all that we were doing, all the gamesmanship that was getting them losing their absolute shit out there. They sort of were testing out players. So it was very arrogant way for the new manager, even though you're thinking for them as a qualifying campaign, they've got 2 hard games, like quote unquote, Hampden and Oslo. And that Scotland team had been coming on a fair bit anyway before that. It'd feel very silly time to do it. It didn't make really much sense and you hope that this is exactly like and listen to the Germans. I think we're going to get something quite similar in terms of maybe not the German national team manager, but the German people, I think, are underestimating Scotland right away. Well, maybe not the people, when I'm hearing people like Didi Hamann and all that, that's all really talking it down. You're hoping it's very similar stuff, what could happen in the Euros. But like when then we had Ryan Porteous ruffling the guy's head at the side of the park when we're taking in throw-ins, and then we had Rodri having a meltdown after it, talking about our style of play, even though there's nothing wrong with the style of our play. It was a really, really executed, excellently game plan with bits of quality in it as well. It was absolutely nothing wrong with the style. For all that to happen and to do it to like probably in my lifetime, probably one of the most successful, probably the most successful country in terms of how much they've dominated international football. I know they're not the same team anymore, but they still won the Nations League recently.
You saw they won every single other game in the group. Like, it wasn't like, they won the Nations League, they won every other game. The only time they were really troubled, apart from that game, was by us again.
It's like so again, that's not the same as like what we're talking about with Celtic, where it's like the cards are falling and there's loads of teams taking a little bit off them. That isn't what happened. We've still beaten arguably one of the favourites for the Euros at Hampden extremely comfortably. Extremely comfortably.
Well, if anyone was scoring towards the end of that game, again, it was us. Like, I mean, Callum McGregor sashaying through their midfield and eventually creating that chance for Shankland and stuff like that. Like, it was. I don't think I've seen Scotland play better than that. Full stop in a game. and yet it's still number 5 on my list. So that tells you all. But I wanted some of the domestic stuff in before we talk about another Scotland game.
Absolutely. Aye.
Where's number 5 for you?
Is it number 5? No, it'd be number 4 for me.
Number 4, sorry.
Number 4. Oh, what one am I going to go for? I'll save Thistle. Maybe I'll have Thistle a bit higher. That was, but let's go for Aberdeen's week from hell. Craig, I mean, it was just unbelievable. I've never seen like quite a collapse over a week quite like it. I know that Goodwin wasn't doing great before that, but to have it happen like that and like so many issues, especially when she get to Easter Road at the end and how that all unfolded. But like even just starting off with Hearts totally thumping them at Tynecastle, which was a pathetic. Aberdeen sort of started that game quite well, if I remember correctly. And then Hearts, once they got ahead, which is pretty much a theme of this Aberdeen team, is that they are literally spineless. The minute things started to go against them, they would totally fold. And then Darvel beating them, which was one of the still, I mean, people talk about the types of players Darvel had and they spent money. It's still possibly the biggest Scottish Cup shock of all time.
They talk about they spent money. They were signing like they were spending money on like League 1 and League 2 players. It's not like to play in the 6th tier. It's not like they were like going out and getting guys that were being released by or like being sold by St Mirren or anything. Do you know what I mean? Like
so I never really bought into the idea that it still wasn't quite a fairy tale. It was still absolutely insane. I mean, Aberdeen are literally one of the top 5 biggest clubs in this country. I know we could argue about where they placed in that, but they are absolutely one of those. And for Darvel to do that to them, they've not kicked on for that at all. Darvel, that was the culmination of any investment, anything they've done. That is the culmination of that. That night is they are.
For probably anyone outside of Ayrshire, you probably barely heard of Darvel before. Yeah. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like you're not even if you had been told 2 years earlier or Aberdeen are playing against Darvel, would you have been able to show me where would you have known if they were going north, south, east or west to get there? Like, do you know what I mean?
No idea.
We always knew because it's where the TV transmitter used to be when you were growing up. You were on the Darvel transmitter, but like it was. I had this at number 2 on my list. Like the Darvel game, like it will go down. People still talk about, for example, Berwick Rangers beating Rangers in 1967. That's definitely in the same breath as that in terms of like people will always associate that with Aberdeen in the Scottish Cup now.
Absolutely, yeah. And then it all then obviously they turn up to Easter Road and it's something that's hard to notice. The whole down in tools phrase that's used about teams and like players not doing it, and something that I at times find that quite hard to pinpoint. I think you're quite good at it, Craig. I see you saying it at times. I think you've got a good attention. Your concentration's good, and that obviously for the type of work you do is very good. That's obviously happened. So you've got that, and I notice you say it a lot. Not a lot, but I see you notice it when you watch games sometimes about maybe players when they're really not putting it in, but that game, there is not a person in the stadium who didn't know that Aberdeen had downed every single tool. Yeah, I've never quite seen it. I've never witnessed it quite like that. It was laughable. And Hibs were just able to run over the top of them and do whatever they wanted at will. And then we were able to put on, like, Josh O'Connor's now playing for Airdrie and he's in and out the team, but it popped him and he was turning Liam Scales inside out and winning penalties. To what, like, the guy never kicked the ball at that level in his life.
Liam Scales going from playing in that defeat against Darvel to starting basically every game for Celtic in the Champions League. Like,
and Scales had a few stinkers against Hibs, even at Easter Road, just in general. Because I remember I was trying to track him, because I remember I was a bit like, because he started to get better towards the second half of last season. Because before that, I was like, he is absolutely atrocious. He's an atrocious player. Now it's like he sort of turned it all around a bit. Even though you still say it's maybe an indictment of where Celtic are in the signings they made. But then for that, when that all finished, and obviously you're leaving the game, and you're going to the pub, and you're just hearing all the stuff filtering through, like Cormac's crying on the radio.
Did you leave the game in a more dignified manner than Jim Goodwin did?
Well, yeah, exactly. And then you get home, and you see that, and he's jumping over the advertising board and behind that bloody Lynx the cat with the sunglasses on. and jumping over it, and like I've never seen anyone leave Easter Road like that. I'm sure it does happen. I'm sure it does, because it is open and it probably is easy to get to the buses at that side to go. But I imagine he would just want to get out of town and drive into his own car. And then Cormac crying on the radio, and like they just had such a bad week. The fans absolutely spitting blood. And then what's quite funny about it is that Aberdeen still finished the season another really successful one. And like they're just Scottish football all over, and especially last season, that you can have that week and you still end up qualifying for the European groups for the first time in 20 years or something.
and the manager goes and gets another top flight job in about 4 weeks.
Aye,
I mean,
and then gets
okay,
them relegated.
he'll get them relegated as well, but yeah, but it was just like, you're talking about that, and then you're talking about, like Liam Scales is playing the Champions League for Celtic. Ross McCrory gets his big money move, which is never he's been out since he went there. But you're like looking at that team, and you're still like, Ramadani's away to Serie A. All those players, all the managers, everybody just moves on to better things anyway, including the club. How does that happen?
And it proves that there's you can't. We'll all do it, but you can't talk in absolutes with football. There is no like there's no end for. And it does happen, but you can never guarantee things. What's going to happen, and how players are going to react, and where they're going to go, and what's going to happen after things, because. Especially, it's just so competitive, and you could get 5 wins on the trot here, and you can do anything. You can be achieving all sorts in terms of Scottish football, and like you're saying with these guys. So, incredible stuff. From there'll never be. I don't know if we'll ever see a week like it for a club.
Well, my number 4 is one that's been touched on already. We've not talked about yet, which is the playoff final, June 2023. Ross County v Partick Thistle, and you can go further back to that, because Partick Thistle's entire run to the playoff final, because they just started, because obviously they'd had that match at Ibrox, which that could have been a moment. I forgot about that.
Oh, God, that should be on there.
But we'll talk about it now.
I'll do that, because I'll do that, and I'll take off one of my other ones so we can talk about it.
And they were struggling. They brought in Chris Doolan. They basically barely lost a game. Sailed up the league, finished 4th. Absolutely scudded Queen's Park in the first playoff game. Then scudded Ayr United even more in the second one. Beat Ayr 8-0 on aggregate, and then went into playing Ross County. Played them at Firhill and got a good result. Probably should have beaten them by more goals, but you're still looking at it and thinking, like, you are probably now favourites to get promoted here. And they were clearly, very, very, very obviously the better team when they won that game. It was 2-0, but as I say, it was 2-0 going on more. And then they go to Dingwall and also then go ahead in that game just before half-time. So you're 3-0 up at half-time, 45 minutes to play. Still 3-0 up with 20 minutes to go. And you're looking at, like, and I'm certainly living 45 minutes walk along the canal from Firhill. I'm like, yes, happy days. This will be nice. Also, there's a team we'll definitely finish ahead of. So that was all looking very positive to me. And then all of a sudden, in the space of 2 minutes, Ross County managed to score twice. One of the most, the team could score, and Ross County got the first goal. It was a penalty from Jan Danda. One of the most brainless kickoffs I've ever seen. Basically, like, they've just finally got their tails up. Something's maybe happened for them. Partick Thistle basically gave them the ball right back, and Simon Murray scores. Then you're obviously clinging on, but it looked like they had clung on. They kind of weathered the storm a bit. They missed quite a good chance, actually, if I remember rightly, to kind of basically kill it off. And then I think 3 minutes into stoppage time, George Harmon pops up at the back post and takes it to extra time. Nothing happened in extra time, or at least no goals. And then they fell apart in the penalty shootout as well. So it was just like, from the highs of every single other game in that playoff campaign to the absolute lows of basically going out.
Yeah, because that's the difference in this one. It's not just that one game. They built up so much momentum, and that's what makes the collapse. The collapse is 20 minutes at the end of, like, bloody whatever it is, 370 minutes or something. Like, the collapse is actually that long, like it's about 4 games worth. And every other game, they've been absolutely scintillating. They've been hammering teams. And they've... I remember people were so excited about Pardiso coming up because they looked electric to watch. And they were great fun to watch. And everyone thought that it was going to be... like there would be a good adage to the league. And Ross County had been like abject last season as well. And I was... this isn't going to be good for my... I'm talking about that. At the start of the show that I work for a charity, and I'm about to say I was at Stockbridge. The Stockbridge in Edinburgh, the food zone with all the music and stuff on that's on during the summer. I was there, so I actually wasn't watching it. I went to meet someone about doing the photos at my wedding. I met them there to do that and thrash out all the details with Mandy. So I noticed that and I was like, all right, that game's over. Like, fine, I'm not missed anything. And it was actually way after the fact. And I'd had a few beers and I was coming back to the toilet and I got a bit of internet and I was like, oh Christ. And it was all the yous talking on the podcast chat. What? Because I was like, oh, shame we're not got the Dingwall next season. We've lost it. I'll just be going to but I was like, the West End might be a good laugh. And obviously, like, we know people over there. It'd be good fun. But aye, it's an incredible collapse. This on. And the other things you feel sorry is like, that takes years to get to that position again for a club like Thistle, and it feels like it almost it'd be like it's like Wraith this year if they don't manage to get up in one bit of shape or form. You feel like the team just going to get a bit decimated, and Thistle are still kicking about, and they could make the playoffs, but
they will make the playoffs. They're already like 10 points behind the top two and 10 points ahead. They're like sitting on third, like no one anywhere near them. So they will
just think they'll not be able to build. But you still struggle to see them being able to get there again. They don't have as good a team, and that they lost some of the best players. So I feel sorry for that because the fans, it's like it's a collapse at the very last after it's years in the making that to get to that situation. So it's absolutely awful for them. I did feel for them, if I'm being honest.
So that brings us to number 3.
Oh, what am I going to do? So we've had Scotland v Spain, and my other ones. I've got Scotland and Spain, and I've got the playoffs in there. So let's just bump them off, and I'll just put one of them in, and then we'll go for. Let's just do the Rangers one. I've never seen the likes, and I still don't know. Well, you do. You've seen it a few times in other countries, but I don't know. Not here. It really didn't suit here. I don't know. There was something about it that really didn't suit, and it was like them realising that Michael Beale's never going to be a Rangers manager. No one in this ground accepts this. They're not here for fair play, man. That's not what Rangers are about whatsoever. Even though they would like to say the traditions and all that, but they're really not. And the booing round there and Alan McGregor struggling to not save it. I absolutely loved that. It was a really iconic moment.
He was having a laugh. I know. I mean, there was a serious and slight element to it, but I do think you're right about that, but also see if I feel like someone like Walter Smith would potentially have done the same thing, but he would have had just had the buy-in. He was just like, he's a Rangers man, and he would have been like, oh, that's what this football club's all about, and it would have been fine. But yeah, Beale just didn't have the gravitas to pull it off.
Yeah, absolutely, Craig. I didn't really think about it that way, but yeah, I think because he's such a stalwart of it, you're absolutely spot on. The fans would sort of go up behind whatever he said, whatever he was about the virtues and the values of Rangers Football Club. But Michael Beale was absolutely nowhere near that level and doesn't really have the gravitas whatsoever as a person to do this. So I think that it sort of more irked Rangers fans than anything else. And it's just unfortunate that it didn't end in actually causing a problem in the match going out.
Yeah, and obviously, yeah, they ended up winning it late on anyway. And I do think that the actual incident itself, it's like Malik Tillman's the only person inside Ibrox who's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to score here, because everyone knew what was going on, apart from him, it felt like, or either that or he knew and he didn't care. And then I think my objection with any team letting an opposing team score is you have to let the goalkeeper do it. Like, it can't be any other player. And I appreciate Jamie said they'd already scored that season, so they were maybe they could have thought about sharing the goals around the squad a little bit, but Scott Tiffany's got plenty of goals before that, so yeah.
But is there another player? Is there another goalkeeper who scored 2 goals in one season?
Yeah, exactly. So that could have been a moment for him. But so that takes us on to number 3, and my number 3. Sorry, that was your number 3. So my number 3 is a title decider from Ibrox in May. It's Glasgow City winning the league in the most dramatic of circumstances, and this was something that you don't really see a lot in football, which is a three-way title race going all the way to the last day, where Celtic were playing at home, but Celtic were sitting. The only way Celtic could win the league was if Rangers v Glasgow City was a draw, which obviously was going to be quite unlikely, given that either of those teams could only really win the league with a victory. So it kind of set up a very, very strange situation where, like, the game at Celtic Park was like Celtic beat Hearts 2-0, and that was kind of always Celtic were going to win. And you were basically looking at Ibrox to say what's going to happen here, and it was a very dull game in general. Like, I think the occasion got to all the players, and the pitch probably a wee bit bigger, etc. And as a result of that, I would say, like, it felt everything was happening in slow motion. But you kind of always thought, well, these teams both need a goal to win the league, so neither of them are really going to sit back. Like, yeah, whoever finished second would get a Champions League spot, and City had that to hold on to in a sense. But you're not going to sacrifice,
surely
for a league title.
Aye.
And even the goal itself was very slow motion. They kind of won the ball down the left, and it was like everything kind of happened very slowly, and it made its way to Lauren Davidson at the back post, and she kind of poked it in. And because it was obviously an Ibrox, and almost all the people there would be Rangers fans, and City, although they're the kind of trailblazers of women's football, maybe don't have that big a support. There was certainly some of them in there. It was very, very quiet, and it's one of those like almost anticlimactic moments, because you're like, is this not stood for some reason? And then you're like, no, that it's just obviously none of the people in the stadium wanted that to happen.
Want this to happen.
And obviously that gave them, and it was a big title for them, because they'd obviously been dominant for so long, but then they had lost the title the previous season. And you thought, maybe their time's up, but they obviously managed to turn it around. And Rangers had a chance right at the end as well. They had a penalty shout, and they had I wouldn't call it a disallowed goal, because the foul was given long before the ball made it into the net, but it was...
What happens there? Did they sacrifice the goal and put it wide deliberately to make sure that Celtic can't win the league?
But as you say, that cost them the Champions League in itself, whereas if they'd won, they'd have finished above City.
It's like you're saying, it was quite a fun thing, because obviously it was Glasgow City sort of fighting back from being the sort of dominant force and never really having that questioned over the years. And it's just the narrative in some of the women's footballs that was really good for women's football, that in general here. And even just like things like the managers fighting on the touchline, I think all that's really important. It's like, so it's just to make sure that things aren't manufactured, and that the passion out there is real.
Yeah.
And that's very apparent nowadays in Scottish women's football.
Yes, and it's about legitimising it for people who need to be convinced, and maybe it shouldn't be that way, but you do need people to kind of sit up and go, okay, this is worth watching, because otherwise they're just going to keep thinking what they've always thought. Right, so that takes us to the top two. What have you got in second then, Tony? What have you still got? Is it
So, I mean, I've just got... I had Spain, so we'll not have to go over that again. So,
yeah. So I think we've
got the same number one, I'm going to
assume. Yeah, so I think we can move on to that, because my number two is Darvel beating Aberdeen in the Scottish Cup. So I think we can very much move on to... Now, we've done about, just over an hour, nearly an hour and 10 minutes or so on this. We could probably spend another hour and 10 minutes talking about just this game. But we won't. We will round it. We've talked about it plenty of times. 17th of June 2023, and absolutely, this will be iconic in Scottish football, much in the same way as the McFadden goal, much in the same way as for older people like Joe Jordan scoring against Czechoslovakia, Kenny Dalglish scoring against Spain, Mo Johnston against France. All of these goals, especially those ones, because the McFadden one obviously ended up counting for nothing, but all of these goals were the moment that sent Scotland towards their finals. They might have been early on in the campaign. This was only the third game of the campaign, but that was the moment where you're like, yeah, this is us. We're doing it this time, and proved to be the case. It's Norway 1, Scotland 2. Like, I've lost count of the number of times I've watched this footage back. Like Rory Hamilton and Mikey Stewart over the top of it. Everything about it is just absolutely perfect. I've never let out, I think, and I've certainly not in a long time, a yell of the way I did for that second goal. It was just incredible, the way it built up, the way the afternoon was going, and then all of a sudden, just the bedlam of it.
It was the winning goal so aesthetically pleasing as well, which is quite unusual for those. You normally think it's going to be a scrap, but you're talking about the yelp. I was in the Persevere bar in on Easter Road, and I was going to see the Proclaimers at Leith Links after it. So, like, to say that had an impact at that gig would be an understatement. People were walking on water, going into Leith Links that day. Everyone was absolutely buzzing. The pubs were rammed, and it was quite a lot of, like, it was guys, but it was a lot of families and stuff. Because obviously the Proclaimers are like that, and obviously it's in Leith, so it's almost becomes like a Hibs day out almost, if you like. So everyone was buzzing, and it was just it was proper magical stuff. And the reaffirmation, the uniting it had around the country, and that, and the realization that everyone realizing we are probably going here to this tournament, and just we were garbage for large periods of the game. The only game, it was probably the worst performance of the group of that group stage. And again, when I'm talking about these moments where you realize you're definitely going to do it, it's like we get to get a bit of luck. We never do that. We never score 2 goals in the last 2 minutes to turn something round in which was the biggest game of the group. We knew that Spain are going to win the group, and it was against those two teams. And then you've got Lyndon Dykes sort of epitomising the whole performance, because he was awful. Everyone in the country was wanting him hooked off the pitch. Everyone was moaning at the telly when it was Kenny McLean that was put onto the pitch.
I've just called, because I thought I'll do this. I've brought up our WhatsApp chat from the 17th of June 2023.
Yeah.
Joel Sked, surely Nisbet for Dykes is it's 6:33 p.m. So, which was 5:33 back then, because the time zone will have changed. But so with about 25 minutes to go, then I've said, lovely to see Mr. Kenny McLean's international career continuing, obviously somewhat sarcastically at his introduction. And then there we go. And then we're going mental immediately afterwards. So,
there's just loads of yas.
But and it's one of those where, because you score twice in quick succession, it's like I don't know where the yassies blend into one another at some point for these 2 goals. But because it was like in less than 100, I think they're about 100 seconds apart, the 2 goals, because as you and Taylor said several times, like the substitutions that Clark made in that game make absolutely no sense. Kieran Tierney had a knocker. Kieran Tierney struggles to complete 90 minutes for Scotland ever. He brings Liam Cooper on. For him, he goes to a back 4 and takes Porteous off, but who'd had a good game up against Haaland, it has to be said. But he brings on Kenny McLean, and you're like, what's going on here? You've got all these forwards on the bench, and he's the one you bring on, but you saw what happened when it worked.
I like the Dyke getting waved through for the boy, and the boy ends up scoring the own goal at Hampden later on the last day of the tour. But him just getting waved through, it's like John McGinn does well, but it's a pretty poor through ball, and he drives us in, and Dykes just thankfully sniffs it out and prods it beyond, and you're thinking, wow, we've snuck it, we've got a draw when we really didn't deserve one. They've made a massive error, and we've taken advantage of it. Let's get so far up the road. And you've got the camera panning to Haaland as well.
It's the fact that it's unrelated, but Mikey Stewart is talking about the defender falling over, but just as he says the words "big mistake," it pans to Haaland sitting on the bench, and it's like it's just like it's like one of those perfect moments of kind of comedic timing. Like, why on earth they took him off? Like, it was like 5 minutes. It wasn't like I could understand.
Don't get any rest.
Aye. It's like fair enough if you take someone off for like 25 minutes to go, and it's like, oh, we're keeping them for the next game. Or I think they were playing Cyprus, but if they even were playing, but
it was another bit of arrogance. It was giving them around the applause. It's the same as what happened with Spain. It definitely is. It makes no sense in a football and saying why you would take him off, especially when you're defending a lead. He's big for set pieces, so he'd be handy for that. And obviously breakaways, you want to have the world's most lethal striker to take advantage of that.
But what you see is, before you talked about Dykes' goal there, and Dykes' goal's brilliant because your camera angle's right behind it, so you see the ball falling, and you're like, oh, he's going to get there, and then you see him poking it, and you can see it trickling under the goalkeeper, and you know it's in before it's in. And so seeing and that celebration was obviously big. But then, as you see, the when you watch the video, because SFA have got that video that's just basically just keeps the clock just keeps running basically. The ball goes back to their fullback, and they try to ping it long, but they've brought in some dumpling up front instead. I don't know if it was Soloth or something like that. I mean, whoever isn't Erling Haaland comes on up front, doesn't win the ball, it doesn't stick, and basically straight from that falling down, it gets switched out to McTominay out in the right wing. He delivers a really, I mean, the second goal, as you say, is a fantastic goal. So well worked, and you see it because and Michael Stewart calls it. McTominay plays that ball over, and Dykes just has to. It does perfectly. All he has to do is basically hold the defender off because McGinn's over, and McGinn, you think is maybe going to shoot, but he puts it into Dykes instead, and then the layoff is like just so nice into McLean's path, and it's the wee skip. It's the wee skip he does to just set himself, and then it's the right foot, and it's another one that you see, is in from the moment he leaves his foot, and it's just everything about that moment is just astonishing, and that's one that, as I say, I mean, the moment of 2023, it may well prove to be the moment of the 2020s, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully it isn't. Hopefully there's something even bigger next year, but it wouldn't surprise me if.
Well, as I've said, I'm really hanging my hat on the fact that I think out of all the teams in this tournament that Germany could play, because obviously they can't play the very best teams due to the seeding, I genuinely believe we are possibly the worst team for a team that's in a state of flux and doesn't have any identity and has had some really poor results and hasn't played a competitive game in 2 years. I think the Scotland team's the worst team you can play in that, because they are the polar opposite of that. They've got so much belief and identity and know exactly how they're going to play, will know exactly what they're going to do, and they have like a club mentality. I think there's a perfect storm here for a shock.
Well, I want you to keep telling me that all the way to June, because I have spent a ludicrous amount of money on a ticket for that game, so I will be.
Have you got a ticket?
I got a ticket, yes, but
it'll be worth it. And I think you'll be there for one of the greatest Scottish moments.
€400.
And what did your wife say, Craig?
Well, I did tell her, and it was fine. It's fine. I earn more money than her, so
exactly. Yeah. Eventually, like some things I will be paying for. Yeah.
But no, it was fine. The fact that we're there anyway, it's like you need to do it really. And
absolutely,
I thought twice about it, and then I felt like I'd saved 200 though, because I thought with it, by the time it ticked down, I thought there might only have been the €600 tickets left. And so I was like quite pleased. I was like, $400. That's fine.
Oh, it's a fucking bargain.
300. I saw it coming off my credit card account. £340. Perfect. Yes, that's how much I want to spend. That's like how much I spend on my season ticket. But I've never been. It's like I've never been to the Alliance. All of these things. It's the opening ceremony.
I would pay it. I would pay it. If I had the opportunity, I would pay it. And I still, if I'm there and there's tickets going for £400 outside, I'll fucking pay it. I know I will. So,
but fingers crossed it all goes well. But yes, that takes us then. That's a really lengthy, as you would expect, nothing less from me and Tony, roundup of the year. It's been a fun year for the Terrace podcast. I certainly enjoyed, as always, being on the podcast this year and hearing from all the listeners. And I hope that you've enjoyed all the episodes. We've probably done, what will we say, about, I wouldn't be surprised if there's about 300 episodes of the Terrace podcast have come out across the main shows, the Patreons, and all the rest of it. There's something most days, so that makes sense to me. So even if they're not all for you, there is likely, like, at least even if only 10% of our episodes are for you, that is like still 2 or 3 a month, and that is well worth spending your £2 or £5 or £7 a month on Patreon. We'll have some exciting announcements and news, I think, coming up in the new year about things going on with the podcast. But absolutely, keep supporting us, keep listening, and get on the YouTube if you're listening to this. We are on YouTube. Everything's been recorded and uploaded, presumably including this show. And there is a small amount of YouTube exclusive content, especially stuff that's more video friendly. We'll obviously go out there. yeah, keep on top of all that. We really appreciate having an audience to speak to, because otherwise it's just me and Tony, and we would still do it, sit
Yeah,
and
yeah, we would.
talking
Yeah.
shit about football. But it's a good laugh, and I'll just wish everyone a wonderful Christmas if you hear this before then, and certainly a happy 2024.
Lovely, Craig. I'm not going to add anything. That was excellent. Excellent. I hope you have a great time, Craig. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas, and can see just don't, what to do is get your wife a really a poor Christmas present and just say, "Oh, I had to spend all the money."
That'll go down well. So a great idea. All right, cheerio, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Cheers.